The waiter froze with the leather check folder in his hand. Then he looked at me instead of the man at the head of the table. That was the exact moment I realized this dinner had never been about forgiveness, it had been planned from the very beginning. But the biggest surprise wasn't the bill waiting at the end of the meal. It was the two quiet sentences I had already decided to say before anyone even asked me to pay. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 33 years old, and for the last decade I've worked as a regional operations manager for one of the largest hospitality companies in Tennessee. Every week, thousands of guests eat in restaurants I help oversee. I know how reservations work. I know how large parties are handled. Most importantly, I know exactly how people behave when they expect someone else to pick up the check. That knowledge would save me. If you've ever been treated like the family ATM instead of a family member, stay with me. Because what happened that night completely changed how I looked at the people who raised me. 3 weeks before that dinner, my phone buzzed while I was reviewing inventory reports in my office. The screen showed a name I hadn't seen in almost 3 years. Mom. For a second I honestly thought someone else had her phone. 3 years. 3 birthdays. 3 Christmas mornings without a single phone call. No messages. No apologies. Nothing. Yet somehow, there she was. I stared at the notification long enough for the screen to dim before finally opening it. Sweetheart, your father and I have been thinking a lot lately. We'd love to have dinner together this Friday. Just us. It's time we became a family again. Just us. Those 2 words settled somewhere deep inside me. I wanted to believe them. Maybe people really could change. Maybe enough time had passed for old wounds to heal. Or maybe I was about to make the same mistake I'd spent years learning not to repeat. You see, growing up, I wasn't just the oldest daughter. I was the emergency fund. If the electricity bill was late, I paid it. If my younger brother needed money, I found a way. If someone forgot a birthday gift, guess who fixed the situation before anyone noticed? Every family has a role. Mine wasn't daughter. Mine was problem solver. And problem solvers eventually become the people everyone expects to sacrifice first. It didn't happen overnight. It happened one small favor at a time. $50 until payday. Can you cover dinner this once? We'll pay you back. Sometimes they did. Most of the time they didn't. The strange part? I convinced myself that keeping everyone happy was what love looked like. Have you ever done that? Have you ever confused being useful with being loved? Because I certainly did. 4 years. Until one decision changed everything. It happened when my younger brother announced he wanted to open a sports bar. Everyone loved the dream. Nobody loved the math. He had passion. He had confidence. He had absolutely no business plan. During Sunday dinner, my father slid a folder across the table. Just sign here, he said casually. I opened it. Loan documents. They wanted me to guarantee nearly $80,000. I asked one simple question. What happens if the business fails? The room became painfully quiet. My brother rolled his eyes. Mom sighed. Dad leaned back in his chair like I'd personally insulted him. Your family, he said. Why are you making this so complicated? Because complicated was exactly what bankruptcy looked like. I quietly closed the folder. I'm sorry. I can't. That one sentence cost me nearly 3 years of silence. No calls. No invitations. No holidays. Nothing. Until that message suddenly appeared on my phone asking me to come to dinner. Looking back now, I should have asked myself one question before replying. If they suddenly wanted me back, what exactly had changed? At the time, I believed I was driving toward reconciliation. I had no idea I was driving straight into the most carefully planned family trap of my life. And before the appetizers even reached the table, I would discover I wasn't the guest. I was the plan. The closer I got to the restaurant, the heavier the silence inside my car became. I turned off the radio halfway through the drive. Somehow, even music felt too loud for the thoughts racing through my head. Maybe Mom really meant what she wrote. Maybe Dad had finally let go of his pride. Maybe 3 years had been long enough. Or maybe I was walking into something I couldn't yet see. The restaurant they chose was called the Grand Oak, one of those upscale places where the valet smiles before you've even stepped out of the car and every table is covered in crisp white linen. Definitely not the kind of place my parents normally visited. That was my first warning. The parking lot was nearly full. As I searched for a space, something caught my attention. Dad's pickup. Mom's SUV. My brother Ryan's sedan. Then my aunt's minivan. My uncle's truck. Another cousin's Jeep. I stopped counting after the seventh familiar vehicle. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Just us, Mom had promised. So why were half the family's cars sitting outside? For a moment, I considered putting the car in reverse. No confrontation. No awkward conversation. Just drive home. Order takeout. Forget this invitation ever happened. It would have been the smartest decision I'd made in years. Instead, I grabbed my purse and walked toward the entrance. Old habits are difficult to break. Especially when they're disguised as hope. Inside, the hostess smiled politely. Good evening. Name? Carter. She glanced at her tablet and smiled even wider. Oh, wonderful. Your party has already arrived. Party. Not reservation. Not table. Party. One word. Another warning. She led me through the dining room toward a large private section tucked behind decorative wooden dividers. Long before we reached it, I heard laughter. Loud laughter. The kind that only happens after several rounds of expensive drinks. Then I turned the corner. My heart sank. Nearly every chair around the massive table was occupied. Aunts. Uncles. Cousins. Their spouses. Even relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone looked up together. For half a second the room went completely silent. Then my mother stood with both arms stretched wide. There she is. People actually clapped. Someone whistled. Another cousin shouted my name like I'd just won an award. It felt less like a family reunion. And more like an audience waiting for the main performer to arrive. I forced a smile. Mom. I thought it was just the four of us. She laughed and waved her hand dismissively. Oh honey, once everyone heard you were coming, they wanted to see you too. Funny. No one had wanted to see me for 3 years. Now suddenly they couldn't wait. I took the only empty chair. Not beside my parents. Not beside my brother. Directly across from my father. Almost like someone had assigned seats. As I settled in, my eyes scanned the table automatically. Years in restaurant management had trained me to notice details. Half-empty seafood platters. Premium steaks. Multiple bottles of imported wine. Desserts already being discussed before entrees were finished. These people had been ordering for a while. And ordering without hesitation. My father barely looked up before signaling the waiter again. We'll take another seafood tower, he announced confidently. And bring 2 more bottles of your reserve Cabernet. The waiter nodded. Of course, sir. No one asked if anyone else agreed. No one checked prices. No one hesitated. My aunt leaned toward me with a smile. Emma, you've done so well for yourself. Another cousin chimed in. We're proud of you. Then another. Hard work really pays off. Compliment after compliment. Each one sounded kind. Yet somehow, every sentence circled back to the same subject. My career. My salary. My success. It wasn't conversation. It felt like they were building a case. Brick by brick. Sentence by sentence. As another bottle of wine arrived, I noticed something else. Every time the waiter approached, my father's eyes drifted toward me for just a fraction of a second. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But enough for someone who had spent years reading body language across dining rooms. Whatever this evening was truly about. It hadn't started yet. And deep down, I had the unsettling feeling the most expensive part of dinner wasn't going to be on the menu. The pressure didn't arrive all at once. It came disguised as casual conversation. "So, Emma," my uncle said with a grin, "you must be making executive money these days." Before I could answer, my aunt laughed. "She probably spends more on coffee every week than we spend on groceries." The table erupted in polite laughter. I smiled. Inside, every alarm bell was ringing. Years of negotiating vendor contracts had taught me something important. People rarely ask about your income unless they're calculating what they believe you can afford. The waiter returned carrying another seafood platter. King crab. Lobster. Jumbo shrimp. I didn't touch a bite. Instead, I quietly sipped my sparkling water while everyone else celebrated like they had won the lottery. Then my younger brother, Ryan, leaned back in his chair. "You know," he said with a smirk, "it's nice having someone successful in the family." Several heads nodded. No one disagreed. Not even Mom. That silence spoke louder than words. I looked around the table. Nobody had asked how I'd been. Nobody wondered where I'd spent the last 3 years. Nobody apologized. Every conversation somehow returned to money. Success. Work. Salary. The reunion wasn't about rebuilding relationships. It was about reminding everyone what they believed I could provide. Then something unexpected happened. As the waiter cleared another stack of empty plates, he quietly placed a leather check presenter near my father for a signature on an earlier wine authorization. Dad glanced at it for barely a second before sliding it away. But I caught the expression on his face. A flicker of panic. Gone almost instantly. It was small. Almost invisible. Yet impossible to ignore. For the first time that evening, I stopped wondering whether I was being used. I became certain. And just as dessert menus landed on the table, my father folded his hands, looked directly into my eyes, and smiled. The smile wasn't warm. It was confident. Like a man who believed the next few words would leave me with no choice at all. I stepped out of the restaurant without looking back. The cool evening air hit my face, and for the first time in years, I could breathe without feeling responsible for someone else's choices. My phone buzzed again. One message after another. Mom. Dad. Ryan. My aunt. Even cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly remembered my number. I didn't open a single text. Some conversations don't deserve an immediate answer. Some lessons need silence. As I drove home, I realized something that changed my life forever. For years, I believed love meant sacrificing everything. I believed saying yes made me a good daughter. I believed fixing everyone else's problems was my responsibility. I was wrong. Real love doesn't arrive with conditions. Real family doesn't measure your worth by your bank account. And respect that depends on your wallet isn't respect at all. A week later, my mother finally left a voicemail. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask how I was. She simply said, "We need to talk." For the first time in my life, I understood the difference between being needed and being valued. I chose not to call back. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. But because peace had finally become more valuable than approval. Months passed. Life became quieter. I spent more weekends with friends who never expected anything except my company. I traveled. I laughed more. I slept better. Most importantly, I stopped feeling guilty for protecting my own future. Looking back, I don't hate my family. I genuinely hope they find happiness. But I also hope they learn the lesson I had to learn the hard way. No relationship survives when one person is expected to carry everyone else's burdens forever. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever say is one simple word. No. That single word didn't destroy my family. It revealed the truth about it. And once you see the truth, you can finally choose the life you deserve.